Welcome. Thank you for checking out this channel. Hey, maybe some of you recognize me from my other YouTube channels, or maybe you recognize my voice from my podcast shows. Hey, whatever the case, whether you're a fan of my other channels and podcasts, or this is your first time hearing or seeing me, I'd like to welcome you. So this channel I had set up because, well, there's a lot of things that I want to talk about that do not fit into any of the content that my other channels are about. And this is one of those things. So, Crisis on Infinite Earths. Everybody is going off and developing all these fantastic fan theories about how Crisis on Infinite Earths is going to play out. And they keep going back and referencing the comic books. Now, while the CW has gone through and, shown that they may be going back to the comic books, you're just really giving them too much credit. All these fan theories, they're fun, they're imaginative, they would be great, but they're just not going to play out, right? None of this. Here's what's going to happen at the end of Crisis. Everything's going to go back to the way it was, with the exception that Arrow is ending, so there will no longer be Arrow. And so part of what Crisis is about for this is setting up a big major event to get some great ratings, but also to put in place characters whose shows will be created and going off after the Arrow ends. So it's setting up new characters and setting it up where the characters that are on some shows now, such as Arrow, are going to be able to go off and continue into the new shows. Characters that we know and like and all of that, and just try and keep things going without the Green Arrow. And so there's reasons why I believe that when it's all said and done, the multiverse is still going to be the multiverse. All right, so myth number one is that just like in the comics, it's going to be cleaning up the multiverse and putting it all back together into one universe where Supergirl will now be on Earth 1 and Black Lightning will be on Earth 1 and all of it, well, maybe except for Lucifer, right? As everyone's going off and, stating. But there's some major problems with that. And that is these universes won't be able to come together. I mean, if you're talking about comic books, yes, comic books, they can do that because they don't have to worry about, TV seasons and how things have been, developing on each and every show prior to Crisis. So first off, let's take a look at Supergirl and Black Lightning. Right? They exist in different universes at this time. And on Earth 1, there is no L-Corp. There is no Lena Luthor running L-Corp, and there are no aliens on the planet. Right? Now, let's take a look at Black Lightning. How metahumans developed in Black Lightning is different than how they developed on Earth 1 with the Flash and, so on and so forth. And so you can't, recombine these all into one universe, because let's say they go off because Black Lightning, his family was killed, right, in the Crisis. So if you go back and say, well, it's all going to be combined into Earth 1, right? And for that, we're going to bring back his family. Okay, but then if you're picking and choosing, because you can't bring back, tens of billions of people from all the different worlds and fit them all into one Earth. So you'd be picking and choosing. And so what are you going to do? Bring back, just his family? What about the villains? The villains, they have their organizations, they have their funding, they have their buildings, and basically in order for this whole combine everything into one universe so there's more collaboration and crossover, which I don't, buy that anyways, because when you take a look at Cisco's, device, for breaching in between universes, there's really not much of a hindrance towards doing crossovers to begin with. So bringing them all together so that they can do guest appearances on each other's shows doesn't make much sense because they can already do that. Just open a breach and walk through. It's actually very simple. So you go through that and you take a look that, there is no DEO on Earth 1, no aliens on Earth 1. There's no organization. I mean, I don't watch Black Lightning, much. I mean, there's just so many shows I can get to. Eventually I'll get to it. So they don't have the criminal organizations and buildings and all of that set up on Earth 1. And if you're going to tell me that they get to pick and choose who they're going to bring back, from all, which version of people from the entire multiverse that they're going to bring back, you're telling me that they're going to bring back all the criminals and that somehow, those criminals are going to be able to set up. I mean, for this whole combining everything into Earth 1, you basically have to abandon the entire plot and the entire season up until now of Supergirl and of Black Lightning. And that's why these theories about how everything's going to come together into one universe and clean up is all wrong. I mean, shoot, there's no Leviathan, from the Supergirl's world evident on Earth 1. Okay? And then if you're going to say, well, we're going to pick and choose, so, we're going to go back to the dawn of time, create things so that somehow it all redevelops into Earth 1. That the Black Lightning's family comes back into Earth 1 and all the villains from the shows, so that they can continue along their plot line and narratives up till now are also going to come back. Well, that's going to be a hard pill to swallow there, as far as how they're going to do that. They changed the entire multiverse, and now it's just, versions of these people from, this Earth and versions of these people from this Earth and all of that, that only those specific versions all get melded into one universe, and somehow it was always the case. Well, then you also have other problems, which means you might have to rewrite the entire origin story of Black Lightning. Because Black Lightning didn't get hit by a black matter wave from the particle accelerator, right? His meta-human abilities developed completely different than those of Flash. So, are you going to rewrite the origin story? No. Now, some people are going, well, there's just a way that you can, manipulate the entire timeline whereby everything throughout the entire history of Earth 1 all happened the same, or ended up with the same results and somehow ended up with all these people from different universes in one show on Earth 1, all developing the same so that when the crisis is over, they can continue on the plot line of the series, of the season, without any disruption by Earth 1, or without any disruption of crisis. That each season of each show is going to pick up where it left off before the crisis, but it's somehow melded into one. I don't buy it. And even if they tried to do that, there's no way they can do it in any realistic fashion, any way that fans would accept. Right? There's just no way. Now, how do I think Crisis is going to end up? Well, we already have some clues as to how this is all going to play out here. And I have a feeling it's going to be done in a very lazy fashion. And that is, they're just going to get their hands on the Book of Destiny and rewrite it. That's it. Because remember, Lex Luthor has already shown that, the Book of Destiny is not set in stone. You could just take a Sharpie and write something different in there, and boom, that's what's going to happen. So if they can get their hands on the Book of Destiny, just like Lex Luthor did, they could just take a Sharpie and rewrite whatever ending that they want into the book. They could just simply rewrite and the multiverse was restored as it was, right? And boom, the multiverse is restored. I mean, after all, if Lex Luthor could take a Sharpie and write his name into the Book of Destiny as being one of the Paragons instead of Kingdom Come Superman, put his name over top of Kingdom Come Superman, and boom, suddenly he's a Paragon reappearing at the vanishing point while Kingdom Come Superman disappears. Then what prevents them from taking a little Sharpie and writing anything else that they want into that book as the way to defeat the Anti-Monitor and restore the multiverse as it was, so that after Crisis, the seasons that have been developing up till this point can just continue on. Sure, they may mention, Crisis. There may be, more collaboration between Black Lightning and the Flash. And one of the reasons I think that they kept Black Lightning out of crossover events or out of, the Arrowverse up until this point was so that it can develop on its own, right? One of the criticisms that you could say of Supergirl is that they did a crossover way too soon. And let's say with the Flash, well, the Flash got his start from Arrow, initially appearing on Arrow and basically having his, backdoor pilot on Arrow, right? But Black Lightning has developed and has been able to sustain on its own without the help of any of the other shows. And that may have been a good benefit to Black Lightning, helping to establish itself and gain its own fan base rather than having it directly connected to or being propped up by the other shows in the Arrowverse, which makes it a stronger show, I think, overall, because it was able to stand on its own. But to now have, a crutch, between the two shows, now there may be a little more crossover between them now that Black Lightning is established. But in the end, you're giving the CW too much credit. You're giving the writers way too much, credit as to being able to figure out how to merge all the universes back together into a single universe and continue the plot lines. It's just not going to work. I mean, the comic books, they didn't have to worry about, 22 episodes and a single season creating a cohesive narrative and all that. The comic books, they can just, make up whatever they want. There didn't really need to be a whole lot of continuity in the comic books. They could just, bring things together however. Right? So while Crisis may have been the way of the comic books, cleaning everything up and all of that, in the comic books, you don't get as much detail as you do in the TV shows. You don't get as much character development, plot development. You don't get as much as about the history of the organizations that are supporting the bad guys that they are going up against. And so they didn't have to worry about whether people are going to buy that you could change the entire multiverse and all of a sudden L-Corp is going to be perceived as if it was already there. And getting back to the whole issue of, bringing back, Black Lightning's family and, but without the villains possibly. Well, let's say they did all of that. And now aliens exist on Earth 1. Well, Earth 1 is not used to aliens, but you could say, well, you're going to rewrite that. Well, what about the Kryptonians in Earth 1's universe? There has been no indications whatsoever that Krypton, exploded in Earth 1 universe, or that, Krypton and Kryptonians had to travel or made safe passage to Earth. So now are you going to say that in a universe where Krypton was probably left still intact and the people of Krypton still on their planet enjoying peacefully, you're now going to say, we're going to merge Supergirl over to Earth 1 and now we're going to destroy Krypton, right? So that we can have a reason for Supergirl to be on Earth 1. Well, now you just killed hundreds of millions of people to billions of people, however many Kryptonians that there were, in order to merge the universe, whereas they were alive before. But then again, maybe nobody survived Krypton, and that's why no Kryptonians have ever been seen on Earth 1 or any other aliens. You know, which also gets off of the whole question, why doesn't Earth 1 have any aliens? And are you now going to throw that in? And plus, how are you going to say that with all the Earth and the multiverse, and just the United States alone had so many different presidents making so many different decisions that the history would all be the same, combined, you know, despite the difference in the presidencies leading up to the nowadays? You know, it just doesn't make sense. All right, so in the end, what they're going to do is they're going to bring back the multiverse. They're going to restore everything to exactly where as it was prior to Crisis. And then they're just going to continue on their seasons. There's not going to be some big, you know, change around. You know, other than ratings, it's about developing characters, getting ready for their own show launch so that you are introduced to them. And, you know, with Arrow, you know, going away, you know, you'll have a reason to watch them. That's it. That's all Crisis is going to be. I mean, it's turning out to be pretty good. It's pretty entertaining. But if you're expecting this to change the entire Arrowverse and rearrange everything to clean up the multiverse, no, that's just not going to happen.